To begin the dismantling of the seat back, first thing you want to do is you need to remove that centerpiece which is in the middle of the seat. Put the seat forward, and then this thing here needs to be pulled out of there, so you're just going to lever it. It's actually quite a tight fit, and there's sort of little barbs on this plastic piece of piping in there, but that just gets levered out of there all the way across. Also at the top here you'll have the coat hook, so that just gets, that'll be in there like that and sort of pulled down to install, but then you're just going to get that and push it up, and that'll just pop straight out. There's just two little clips that go into those slots there. Once you pull that bottom bit out, you can just pull that through from the bottom, and there are a couple of connection points that hold this in. There's a slot here where it just sits on the top of that. That's the last thing that's going to be pulled in, removed, so that is the first thing that goes on when you install, so it sort of slots down on that. And then here are two clips, and they sit behind these little lugs there. To actually put those in, so when we're installing, we're going to push those in like that, and they're going to slot behind the metal piece. When I first pulled this apart, mine weren't actually installed correctly, so make sure when you're doing this, when you're installing, you push this to the side so you can see what's going on behind, and make sure it slots in. And to get these out, and it's probably just if I go around to the back to show you what's actually going on, you can see they're slotted around those silver lugs there. And I found the best tool to remove these, because you need to push this whole thing back like that so it's actually clear of that position, because if you don't do that, this thing just gets stuck and you can't get the thing out. Is actually use like a putty knife, a plastic putty knife like that, because then what you can do, and I'm going to sort of on the other side, I'm going to pull it to the side so I can see what's actually going on down the side here, and I'm going to push that putty knife and just keep on wiggling it back, because it's going to do this, and then it'll just pop it like that, and you can actually push it so it keeps it out of the way, and then that can be moved clear, and then you're going to do the same on the other side. And then once you've done that, there's that lug where it's actually fitting on the top. You can just lift that up and that whole thing can come out. At the bottom down here, there will be the electrical connector for the seat heating, so just disconnect that. At the back, the main piece of leather that goes over the seat, there's going to be this piece here, which is going to be folded around, and it's going to be in that slot there. So basically you're going to move that sideways, and then that allows that to come free, and you can do that on both sides. For the connection point that goes around here, basically I can just lever this one out, so I just get in there with a plastic pry tool and lever that out on both sides, and this just gets, actually it's sort of jammed down on the bottom here, so you sort of lever it out the bottom at both sides, and then you can just gently pull this out, and that whole thing pops out of that slot just there. When you first get the seat center off, this is kind of what you'll be confronted with. This here is the bladder for the lumbar support. To remove that, just so it's out of the way, there are two springs that hold onto this frame here. They get put onto, there's just a couple of lugs here, one on each side on the metal frame. So you just get some pliers and disconnect that. This metal pole here, you'll have those things there, those little clips. So you're just going to pull that off, and then it'll just be sitting by the lines here. There'll be some zip ties that you'll just need to quickly unclip, and then you've got the actual motor. I think this is a little pump that actually blows this up and lets it down, because it's just a little bladder that blows up and down. And there's a electrical connect there that you can disconnect, and that thing just pops straight out, and then that whole thing gets removed. If you have the seat ventilation, I think the fan is in there, so you'll need to remove that. But the way this is all held in place is this will be pulled in by a number of clips that are held in around this plastic piping around the edge here. And there's a whole bunch of these clips that are sitting all the way around here. There are two different types. There are the white ones and the black ones. The black, they're both, I'm not sure if you can see what they look like. but they're little clips, and at the ends where they hold onto the piping there, they're exactly the same shape. But the black ones are a little bit longer because they're mounted a little bit further back on the frame. There's black ones there and ones at the bottom, and then there's white ones here and a bunch around the top, etc. These are a complete pain to get off, to be perfectly honest, and it's one of the hardest jobs, or hardest parts of the whole job. So you might need to make yourself some new tools, or just break them and replace them, because these, like, they push on really, really hard. They can slide up and down, but because of this sort of barbed nature of that piping, these are close to impossible to get off. Now the black ones at the bottom, because it's down the bottom there, I actually was just able to pull that up and slide that off, so that was pretty simple down the bottom. The white ones here on the back of them, they just have a normal two-pronged little barb thing there. Hopefully you can see that. That mounted in these holes, sometimes there are some places where you can get behind them and actually just push those in and pull those out, which allows them to be unclipped, which is great. But there's spots up here at the top where you don't have that because the frame completely shields you being able to get at it. And I ended up making a couple of tools to try and, like for example, this funny shaped tool where I flattened this off so that could actually get in behind it, because you have to open it up on both sides, and then this one was shoved down on this side so I could actually open up these clamps to try and get them out. It was seriously hard work, to be perfectly honest, and a lot of the time I just couldn't get the things out. So what I ended up doing was I actually cut the piping away, like a good couple of inches away from where the clips are actually going, and then just slid it out. And that seems to hold it perfectly okay in place. But that was what I resorted to, because to be honest, that is the hardest part of the job. Also the black ones, this one hasn't been damaged, but the other ones that are just here, at the top here, they broke off at the back. So I'll need to probably replace those. That was, the bit at the back here was pretty weak, just due to the leverage on those as I was working on them, and they snapped pretty easily. Once you get that off, and all those disconnected, the next thing you need to do is remove the airbag. Now the airbag is going to be on obviously the side. There's just one on the outside, and all you're going to do is open this up here, and there are going to be two screws that mount to the airbag. The airbag looks like that. It's going to be mounted on that side. There's those two screw connections, and once you disconnect those, the thing comes loose. And then on this side, once it's loose, there are two connections. There's a ground cable, and this one here, you're just going to slide that one back, just get a small screwdriver and just wiggle that back, and that'll just pop straight off, and then the airbag can be removed. Clearly, if you're doing this in the car, you need to have the battery disconnected, etc. But I would suggest doing all of this with the seat out of the car and up on a bench, because it's pretty hard work getting in at everything and rolling the thing over, etc., to get everything apart. Once the airbag is removed, you just need to disconnect the piping that goes around the edge of that. It's just a plastic piece like that that links up or just hooks up underneath the plastic underneath shell. So you just need to go around and sort of just, it's generally easiest to sort of slide that around a little bit to make things loose, and then you can get something in here to remove it and just remove that around. There's one at the bottom, either side, and there's a small one also at the top which needs to come out. Then at the top here, the latch for the go forward lever needs to be removed off. When I looked at these pieces in the workshop manual, it talks about just getting a screwdriver in here and actually levering those up to get those out. And they also say that they're going to break, but this is how the way they work. You can see that's actually just held in there and sliding up and down. There's actually a notch on each side and a little knob on the actual bit that moves up and down that holds it in that, and actually slides up and down. So that's actually the thing that holds it in place, which is interesting. The actual lever that it's going to sit on is one that looks like that, and when it's actually in place, you can see that little barb there holds onto that, but it's actually going to be about there somewhere. So it doesn't actually sit on that barb. So I worked out a way of actually getting these things out without breaking them. So when it's in, it's going to be sitting there like that, so that piece there is actually not going to be sitting against the barb like that. It's actually in further like that. And you can see that these clips at each end. So what I worked out was that I could actually push a screwdriver in. So I actually pushed it, for example, the handle to one part of the travel, and then I actually got a screwdriver and just slid it in along the side there and pushed in there and moved it rearward, or moved it out. Same on the other side, and then moved it up, okay, and did that same. And so this thing popped out, and so it ended up like that. So this whole thing was actually free, and all I needed to do then was actually get in and free that from there and lift that up, and that whole thing just slides out. And for mine, that would actually be a better way of doing it, so that you don't break the actual clips. Once you get the cover off, then to remove the foam, this is actually glued on, and it's glued on all the way around the perimeter. And it's a really gummy type of glue. It's like the stuff that's on the back of a sticker. So all you need to do is come along and just gently pry that away, and you can see there's just some residual left over from before. But you just go all around nice and slowly, and eventually that whole thing will come off. Down the bottom of it, you'll actually have the seat heating connection. There's one on each side. The one on this side is obviously pretty simple, but this other one actually feeds all the way down into the bottom of the seat and underneath it. And getting that out is a real pain. So if you can actually do the work that you want to without actually disconnecting that, then I would go ahead and do that. But if you want to, then it's actually a bit of a palaver. They talk about in the book of just feeding it through a slot here, when in fact that slot actually is really difficult and everything gets jammed up, and you'll actually need to remove everything off the side down here and all this trim around here, which is a bit of a pain, to actually get this cord freed, so you can actually then disconnect it and take it away if you need to. To then remove the plastic casing away from the metal frame, there are 6 screws that need to be removed. Once you've done that, there are 2 clips in here that you need to they're pretty simple, you just push those together and that just moves out towards the back. These get moved out, and you must have the go forward levers removed. The other things will actually be sticking out, those metal levers. These things will be sort of sticking out through here, just out to about here somewhere, so you'll have to sort of move that out, and then you can pull the whole thing away. As you can see at the top, it's a little bit difficult. It's actually clipped on up the top here. There's a couple of little clips that stick on those things there. So you sort of just need to pull those apart and pry that out to get those clear of those knobs. The go forward lever mechanism, when you get access to it, there's a cable that runs down each side. The first thing you'll notice is a sort of fairly soft spring that sits between that hole and just a little hole up there, so you can quickly disconnect that. And then there are 3 of these push-on holders. I'm not exactly sure what you'd call them, that actually hold it. The middle one just pivots by itself. These 2 are actually connected to the frame, and in the middle of it is this spring here, which does that, I guess, springing action. To remove those, obviously we're going to remove those 3 things there. I can just get some pliers and just pull out that spring. And then there's just a pin in the middle here. They can probably just stay in, and then you just move these out and they can just pop straight off. There are little plastic grommets that sort of go in there. And then the actual cable itself, I've taken the one on the right hand side out already, and it's just got a little right angle bend in it. You just do it like that and it just pops straight out. So down the bottom, the bit that does the actual work is this one here. It's going to be connected to that lug there, so if you just lifted those up manually on both sides, the seat obviously moves, locks back into place. And to put that on and take it off, it's put it at 90 degrees like that, and then it sits there like that. And if you want to take that off, then you pull, obviously disconnect that. If you need to replace the Bowden cable, you pull off that clip there, and then that one comes up. And on the inside here, and I'll show you on the other side, there is a clip just there where you actually just push that. There's a tab on the other side that you push in that allows that whole clip to be released out, and then that whole Bowden cable can be pulled out and replaced if required. To remove the switches here on the side, which you'll need to do to get access to the cover here at the back, there are 2 screws that need to come out. There's one that goes in there up the front, and there's one up the back that goes in here. And then once that's out, there's these clips at the front here and there, which you get access from underneath. Before, obviously the seat needs to be out for you to take this out. Then make sure before you remove the seat that the seat is as high as you can possibly get it, otherwise you're not going to get access to these things. And then these are actually a bit of a pain to actually try and squeeze this clip together, so then this pulls out, so it actually comes out of this hole here. I've actually sanded a little bit off the edges of these to make it a little bit easier next time, but I needed to actually get a couple of small screwdrivers to actually jam them in the side and then wiggle each of those out. That was actually a bit of a pain. And then at the front there's going to be an electrical harness or a plug that needs to be disconnected. To get access to that shroud underneath that actually has that electrical wiring go through it, you actually need to remove this thing initially, so you get access to that torque screw that's underneath it. It has 2 screws. There's one there which is in under there, and there is also one under there which is on this side here. When you are pulling it out, it's going to clip into, there's a lug there which is going to clip into the back there, then it's going to be a bunch of clips that clip into those spots there. If you need to pull out the electrical cable for the backrest heater, they go through these slots here, which goes through a gap in this particular shroud here. The way to remove that, there's a single torque screw there. You just remove that, and then that clip there needs to be levered up and over the metal bit that's underneath it. And also the clip in there needs to come out and out this way. It's pretty fiddly to actually get the thing out, and then it'll just gradually get maneuvered out. To glue the cushion in place, all I've done is I've just plonked it down in the right spot and then just gone around the edges, put some brush on contact adhesive, pushed it down there, waited a few moments, then give it another press, and that's glued it on really nicely. And once the cushion is glued on, then this thing just slips straight on over the top. Just make sure everything's in the right position. And before you start clipping all those clips on the inside here, make sure you fit the airbag, make sure that's all tucked in with that piping around the edge there. Connect that, connect all the lumbar support, and if you've got the seat ventilation, make sure that's in. And as the final thing, then clip all of those clips around the edge there, and then finally you can put the seat back in. So that little spot in here where this runs up and down, I'm just going to put a drop of oil on each side of that just so it runs a bit more easily. And that's actually moving much more freely than it was before. So when you're putting these things in, put the seat in the go forward position so there's not much force on the actual lever. Slot it over the actual metal lever on the inside and gently push it in. Don't just try and push it in hard because it actually doesn't really want to go in like that. What I found was you're probably better off having this thing midway and then sort of slotting it in at the back first, and then once it's in there, then you can push it in at the front. If you try and push it all the way in, it just sort of forces itself against the plastic and doesn't want to go in.